Good morning, viewers, and welcome back to the Tobago Updates Morning Show. And we have on set with us today Mr. Anslem Richards, former member of the TTPS and Chief Technical Advisor to the Tobago House of Assembly. Mr. Richards, how are you doing this morning?
I'm fine, thank the Lord. Good morning. Thanks for having me. Good morning, Tobago, wherever in the world you are.
Okay, Mr. Richards, and you know that we are having ongoing conversations about the situation concerning former COP, the embattled Earl Haywood Christopher. And we just want to get your thoughts on the entire situation as the TTPS finds themselves again in another major challenge.
Well, for me, and I don't know if you have seen my Facebook post on this matter. I've made 2 Facebook posts on this matter. For me, this is a situation that should have never happened, because there are clear procedural issues of how you treat with investigation, especially when you're investigating senior officer, and particularly when you're investigating officers for offenses that are not clear, like misbehavior in public office. The procedural issue will be that you will gather your evidence, interview all the persons, the suspect, all the related parties, gather the evidence, and then you will engage with the DPP, who will sift the evidence and see whether you have enough evidence to substantiate the charge you have intended to prefer against the individual under investigation. That seems not to have been the case in this matter. It seems like the arrest was effected first, commissioner was detained, evidence was then taken to the DPP, and when those evidence was evaluated, the DPP recognized that they were not sufficient to make a prima facie case, a good case, against the Commissioner of Police, and then hence he ordered the release of the Commissioner of Police without charge.
So the fact that they arrested the former commissioner without consulting with the office of the DPP, would that be considered somewhat of an illegal arrest?
Well, it turns out that way, because the commissioner was released without charge, and therefore it means the arrest was not justified on the evidence that the investigating officer had at the time. If they had sufficient evidence to make the case against the commissioner, the case that they were investigating, then when the evidence was presented to the DPP would have evaluated the evidence and then concur with the arresting officer that sufficient evidence was available to make the charge in the courts of law. That has not happened. So one will logically deduce from this that the evidence that the investigating officer had in his or her position at the time was not sufficient to justify the arrest of the Commissioner of Police.
And now we find ourselves in this debacle. This has happened. It did not go the way it was supposed to go in terms of protocol.
Well, this is the way it was supposed to go.
Okay, now we're talking
about...
this
is the intent of the investigating
officer.
Well,
now we're in this situation, having arrested the most senior officer in the TTPS without sufficient evidence for a matter that you brought before. This is what we wanted to investigate. You don't have sufficient evidence. Arrested the officer, detained, questioned, and released because of lack of evidence. And now we are here. The COP is now on suspension, not able to take back up position. What now happens, I don't want to talk about the COP right now, we'll get into that, but what now happens to the process that was taken place, or the persons who were involved in the process that was taken place, going to arrest the officer without sufficient evidence to form a case? Where do we go from here where that is concerned? Because the focus has been on the COP. Should she return to office? Should she return to office? But what is happening now to the officers who effected the arrest?
2 things are happening here. One, you have the issue of the conduct of the investigating DCP, right? That needs to be treated with by the Police Service Commission, in terms of whether she acted properly and whether there is a case for she to answer for misbehavior or bringing her office into public disrepute. That's for me, and I've made that post in my Facebook post. The other issue is whether this Police Service Commission acted properly in discharging its responsibility and function of supervising the DCP and the Commissioner of Police, and whether they have done due diligence and a fair assessment of the evidence to justify their decision to suspend the Commissioner of Police. I don't think that was done. Because if you use the same evidence on which the investigation DCP went to the DPP which was rejected to suspend the Commissioner of Police, it means, therefore, the Police Service Commission erred in its responsibility to do due diligence and even to follow the basic principle of justice, where the commissioner has a right to be heard in her own defense, the principle of natural justice, where the commissioner has a right to be heard in her own defense. At least the Police Service Commission, in its discharging of its function, should have awaited the verdict of the DPP on the evidence that the investigating DCP took to it, and then it could have used that decision of the DPP to justify its decision to suspend the commissioner. What we have learned is that the investigating DPP went to the Service Commission, reported that she have cautioned and arrested the Commissioner of Police for allegedly misbehaving in public office. Presented
while actually committing the act of misbehavior in public office.
Well, what you call that double jeopardy. So she probably now should be subject to an investigation as to whether she conducted herself properly, right? Because you see, the Commissioner of Police is a constitutionally created position. You know, it's not really about the individual; it's about the office. That's and more so, all these things are happening in a time when we are in a state of emergency, and you are taking action that can plunge the country and the nation into a deeper sense of insecurity.
And that's my next line of questioning, because now we're talking about the public trust in the TTPS. We're already in a volatile position.
Very volatile.
And now we have this situation where we're thinking this unit, this team, this organization, this agency is responsible for ensuring my safety, your safety, the safety of all the residents here in Trinidad and Tobago. And now there's a situation, an internal situation that was made public, and we're wondering if you are, the due diligence was not done on an internal matter. Well, how is it filtered out
to the public? And that's a significant point, because these internal wrangling and power struggle that is emerging and looking like and tasting like a mutiny is not comforting to the average man in the street or even the international community that have significant deep relationship with the country. It's a very embarrassing and unfortunate situation for all of us as citizens of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Here you have a Deputy Commissioner of Police arresting the Commissioner of Police on insufficient evidence for a charge that she's investigating. And that's supposed to really engage the attention of the National Security Council that is chaired by the Prime Minister, and some kind of deliberate action should be taken to ensure that things like these do not happen in the police service again. For me, it is difficult for me to consume that all these events happen without the knowledge of the chair or the leader of the National Security Council. The National Security Council is the highest entity, the body that deals with our national security arrangement, right? That is the Senate, in other words, you call that. You know, in the United States, they talk about the Senate. That's the highest body. It makes all the national security strategy decision, and then the other agencies of the national security architecture go and implement. So it comprises the Prime Minister as chair, the Attorney General, the Minister of National Security, and all the head of the national security agencies. So they come together and make all the necessary policy decision and action and strategy to ensure the safety of the nation. It is challenging for me to wrap my mind around the fact that all these things are happening. The commissioner is suspended by the Police Service Commission. A DCP arrests the commissioner. And the chairman of the National Security Council has no knowledge of all these things are happening.
Mr. Richards, do you think that the national security should be micromanaging investigations of the TTPS?
This is not an ordinary investigation, you know. This is the investigation of the top cop, a constitutionally created post. This is the Commissioner of Police. This is not an ordinary constable.
And who represents the TTPS in the National Security Council?
The Commissioner of Police.
So if the Commissioner of Police is being investigated,
but the point
how does the message get to them to make them aware that she's being investigated?
Well, right. So no. What I'm saying is that if the commission and the nature of this issue, remember the allegation here, as reported by the investigating DCP and the team of executive that was standing in her presence. You know, the concept we just have done so in her presence. We have done by the place down there called the Shaw Park. That was standing in her presence at the time. They spoke to the fact that the commissioner was being investigated for allegedly unlawfully procuring rifles for the SSA. Right. The SSA director normally sits in the National Security Council. Right? The Commissioner of Police has the authority in law to issue importation license, the only person in the country, not even the Prime Minister, not even the Minister of Trade. The Commissioner of Police is the person who issues and signs off on license to issue firearm license and to issue firearm dealers license to import firearm into the country, because that is a control, a national security control activity.
Yes.
So the Commissioner of Police may have signed off on the importation license for these rifles for SSA. But allegedly at the time, SSA was still classified as a civilian intelligence agency in the national security architecture. The director of the SSA, it is reported, made a case to the National Security Council for the SSA to become an armed agency of the national security. That was accepted, and the Firearm Act and Regulation were amended in November last year for that to happen. What happens between that time and how the procurement of these rifles happen? The movement from a civilian agency to an armed agency cannot escape the attention and approval of the National Security Council. You do the maths and see if it's maths.
Now, I know you mentioned earlier about a mutiny in the TTPS.
I say appears to be.
Appears to be a mutiny in the
It
TTPS.
smells like and tastes like a mutiny. I did not say it was a mutiny.
Oh, good.
Please,
good.
do
Well,
not say
I
that.
stand corrected. Earlier this week, we had Captain Gary Griffith in on the program, and he spoke about a culture of infighting within the TTPS. You being a former member of the TTPS, is it your experience that there's a lot of infighting within the TTPS? And what really drives that? What is causing this level of infighting within the organization?
Right. So in every organization, there's always that culture of, I won't call it infighting, that culture in terms of the race to the top. Let me put it like that. The culture of the race to the top. And in that culture, you will always have individuals that are less cooperative and more combative. You know, they're competing as opposed to cooperating. And that's what they are defining as the fight. That's a natural feat in any institution. What has happened in recent time is that it seems, or it appears, that culture has become more pronounced in the police service. So it's more visible that people are now struggling more aggressively to reach to the top. But I think that is a natural feature of all institutions, where people are ambitious and they are looking for promotion and for offices and so forth. But apparently it is appearing now that culture have now elevated to the point that it is apparently impacting the performance of the institution.
I was not going to say, Mr. Richards, the ramifications for that kind of culture existing within an arm of the national security apparatus is far-reaching. When you have something like the TTPS, where they're infighting, from the time you start
And
fighting
highly
amongst
unfortunate,
yourselves.
not to cut you across, highly unfortunate, because it centers back again to public trust, public confidence.
Exactly.
Because when we look at the state of crime, especially in the last half of last year, what crime looked like in Trinidad and Tobago, and here you are thinking that these are the persons, the agency who is responsible for ensuring that they have an arm on crime, and then they're fighting amongst themselves based on the discussion that we're having this morning. It is very unfortunate that we are in that position. I don't have a problem with ambition. We all are ambitious. We all want to attain something. But the ambition in this case, if that's what is happening here, is highly, highly misguided, and it has taken the wrong course where this is concerned. And I'm hoping my primary thing here is to find out what are the steps that are going to be taken for the way things were done in the arrest of the CoP. That is my primary question. What is going to happen next? How do you restore public confidence in the TTPS? How do I feel safe? How do I feel secure that, let's say something happens or a matter has happened and you send out a team and this one want to be the sergeant and this one want to be the superintendent? How do you mitigate that? And how am I certain that the case that I have presented is going to be addressed and that I'm going to get the best results and justice is going to be served? Because now we have this position where people are fighting amongst themselves based on what we're seeing happening here.
Well, the fighting is taking place, but remember too, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, as any other paramilitary and military agency, there's a chain of command, and there's a what I will call a forced institutional discipline. So even if there's that level of ambitious war for want of a better term, or for just for the purposes of this conversation, there is that disciplinary structure in terms of the hierarchical.
But we haven't heard any conversation about that.
Right, exactly. So that is there as in every institution. You remember what happened in the PNM recently when the Prime Minister tried to promote the Chinese Prime Minister? You know what happened in the PNM, and they had to call emergency meeting in Balazi House. It's human beings you are dealing with. And we all have that indigenous gene in our DNA. And the police officers are no different. They are picked and they are drawn from our population. They are not AI people. And they have that human tendency to want better improvement for themselves and their family and even their country. So I would not put a price on that. I would not put a price on that. The issue is, as you said, how do we move forward? What are the kinds of intervention we should be taking to stabilize and restore the public confidence, which is already weak in the police service? Mm-hmm. How do they treat with the behavior and conduct of the investigating DCP to restore confidence in her office? Because I don't know if that could happen, or whether she probably needs to take some leave. Right? So that is something for the Police Service Commission and Mr. Junior Benjamin, Pastor Benjamin. I wouldn't call him the bulletproof pastor at this point, but Pastor Benjamin and the Police Service Commission to treat it going forward.
Well, let's see how we move forward with this matter, and try TTPS. All you have to restore public confidence. Definitely has to happen.
As I said in the start, it is an unfortunate incident that should have never happened because of how the police service is structured. And if you have respect for the Commissioner Office, there are a million ways to do different things.
Clearly, the structure falling apart, because if things can happen like the way it happened,
well, sometimes when you put the wrong
institution is weak.
Sometimes when the wrong individual is in the wrong place, and they can't handle the power and the authority that comes with office. Now, let me tell you something. Authority comes in three forms: position, functional, and possession.
Right,
operationalize those things.
Mr. Richards, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to you live from the Port Mall here in Scarborough, Tobago, and we're speaking with Mr. Anslem Richard, Chief Technical Advisor to the Tobago House of Assembly and a former member of the TTPS. As you are aware, there's an ongoing situation in Trinidad and Tobago that took place last week and is continuing. The conversation is in the air, and the question posed is, should the CoP be reinstated? We don't know, but we're going to have the conversation. We're going to do the research, get the information, have the discussions right here on Tobago Updates Television, and we do hope that you can join in the conversation with us. But we have to go for a short break before we continue conversations this morning. But before we go, there's a photo of the day. We want to take you to the photo of the day. Can you guess where this photo was taken? Yes, please tell us. Let us know in the comments on our Facebook live stream and our YouTube channel. Where was this photo taken in beautiful, beautiful Tobago? I think it's quite easy to figure this one out. But when we come back from the break, we're hoping that you can leave comments on our Facebook live stream. In the meantime, as we go for a break, we invite you to help us. Share the live, share the live, share the live.